than that. Good evening, everyone. All righty, we're here for a wonderful, momentous occasion, so let's give ourselves a hand clap. Thank you so very much for being here tonight for this wonderful occasion where we are honoring Miss Emily Meggett, the matriarch of Edisto Island and the soul behind the stove of this matriarch. Amen? We are delighted to be here, and we actually, before Miss Meggett passed away, we were planning to have a program with her being here physically. And life has it that she went on to glory, but we didn't want to cancel just because she is now in heaven, because her spirit is amongst us. And you all, as family and friends, will continue to have her legacy live on, because we're going to be celebrating her book and her life and everything that she has done in this world, and particularly Edisto Island. So we are so honored to be able to have several people here tonight who will share about her life and the work that she has done in her 90 years. And so we want to just thank you all for taking the time to be here. I just want to let you all know that we have restrooms beyond the exit signs if anyone needs to do that. And we would ask that instead of walking towards the front, if you will walk towards the back and go out towards the left over there to use the restrooms. And there's also a water fountain. We will have a taste. If you've had some of that taste before, we got started tonight. And when the program ends, you'll still have an opportunity to have a little bit of a taste of Miss Emily Meggett's food. So be sure to do that. You are here in this wonderful International African American Museum that has taken 23 years to build, and we are now sitting on sacred land. I want to acknowledge our COO, John Anderson in the back. He waved his hand. And this program, really, we could not have done it without our Faith-Based Advisory Council. So if you are on the council, please stand. Several of our members here tonight. And then we have our faith-based team. We have Dr. Gibbons in the back and Doreen, I think she's over there in the corner. Please wave your hand for our team. And we will have the books on sale tonight, so the family will be signing the books at the table right beyond the glass, and the bookstore is open up front for you to purchase your book tonight. Amen? Amen. All right, so we will get started here, and we will have the program. You have your program. We will follow it as it is written. And so I want to introduce to you Heather Mann, who is on our Faith-Based Advisory Council, who will introduce our moderator.
Thank you, Jeanette. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, this moment is a happy moment. I have the great privilege this evening of introducing to you Carolyn Murray. But if you're like me, Carolyn Murray has been in your living room every night for years. So hopefully I can come up with a little bit of information that you might not know. I'm sure you know her as an award-winning journalist and as an empathic and effective storyteller. But perhaps you're not quite aware of all of the community service that she does, the way that she has held Charleston in countless ways with countless organizations and helped vision into the future to bring about the community that we love now, and also how we can do a little better in the future. So thank you, Carolyn, for that. And I had a conversation this week with Laverne Meggett, who is Miss Emily's daughter, and I said, Laverne, it seems that the family has been very interested in having Carolyn Murray be the MC for tonight. Why is that? Well, I found out about a story. Last year, Carolyn called up Miss Emily and said, I would like to interview you, and I would like it if you would cook for me. Smart woman. So she shows up at Miss Emily's home, and together they prepared shrimp and gravy, and grits, and biscuits. And it was, I understand, the moment when these two titans, this powerhouse, the matriarch of Edisto, and this incredible journalist and civic leader, when they came together and that biscuit touched Miss Carolyn's lips, that their love was sealed for life. And shortly after that, Miss Emily said, I'm going to sign this book for you, and it's to my adopted daughter. So, Carolyn Murray is family, forever and always, and we are in very good hands tonight. So please welcome Carolyn Murray.
She had me at biscuits, to say the very least. What a blessing it is to be here and certainly to be with my family. I am so humbled and honored to have been welcomed into this family in such a loving way. And I know those of you sitting in the audience know that I'm sincere in what I'm saying, that it has truly been a gift in my life to have met someone and immediately fallen in love and to have felt such love. And so I am honored to be here in this place with you, this place that is sacred and real in so many ways. Thank you, Sister Danette. Thank you, Heather, for the warm greeting. Good evening. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gullah Geechee Home Cooking, the soul behind the stove of Emily Meggett, Matriarch of Edisto Island. Red rice, devil crabs, collard greens, Hoppin' John, fried oysters, pound cake, sweet potato pie, biscuits. Y'all see I'm stuck on the biscuits. Hush puppies. Y'all hungry? I don't usually even say the word y'all, but when you talk about Miss Emily's cooking, y'all seems absolutely appropriate. I'm Carolyn Murray. I'm an evening news anchor at WCBD TV, and I'm the host of the podcast Let's Talk, and it is my pleasure to encourage each of you to settle in. You might even want to kick the back of your heel of your shoes off, because we're going to have that kind of celebration tonight, celebrating the life and contributions of our beloved Miss Emily. During the next hour, you will hear stories of the many ways Miss Emily has touched our lives, excited our palates, and made our hearts grow a whole lot stronger. Each of us called her something different, which seems appropriate, as she wore many different hats. And for the record, there are some really good stories and pictures that I know that you've already seen of some of those amazing hats that she wore to New First Missionary Baptist Church on Sunday mornings. Some of the many terms of endearment for Miss Emily include the Matriarch of Edisto Island, Gullah Geechee Queen, I love that one, Chef, somebody help me with this one, MP, who said that one before, and of course, Mommy. My personal relationship with Miss Emily is not as long as many of you in the room, but she was a brilliant teacher, and so I carry lessons she taught me and my husband Jimmy for the rest of our lives, and we are forever grateful. Tonight, in this beautiful space, rich and real in history, we will hear how Miss Emily shaped Edisto Island and the lives of the people who live there, the people who visited, and those who only read about Edisto in books, and one book in particular, that New York Times best-selling book. I've already talked a lot, but I want to add one quick note. A few decades ago, I became one of those annoying people who was very rigid about what they eat. Only thought of food as fuel, trying to eat foods that only help my body. Well, as Miss Heather told you, we walked into that kitchen. She taught me a few things about shrimp and grits and biscuits. Everything that I had thought for 4 decades went out the window. as I put my hands, elbows, shoulders into that plate. Hadn't been the same since. Miss Emily served love on a plate. She created a smorgasbord of kindness and offered platters overflowing with grace. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel of family and friends who will describe a life that was rich in flavor and history and love. Gretchen Smith is the director of the Edisto Island Historic Preservation Society. Donald Dodge is the grandson of the Dodges who hired Miss Emily when she was a very young woman. Greg Estevez is the great-great-grandson of Henry Hutchison, a former enslaved African who built the Hutchison House on Edisto Island in 1885 and is a cousin of Miss Meggett. Reverend Albert Chick Morrison, I would never really call him Chick. Reverend Morrison is the pastor of New First Missionary Baptist Church. Chef B.J. Dennis is a celebrated chef and friend of the Meggett family. Trelawney Michelle is the co-author, public historian, and award-winning writer, oral historian, and teaching artist. She also co-authored the New York Times best-selling and James Beard Award-nominated Gullah Geechee Home Cooking, and Laverne Poochie Meggett. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I not supposed to say that? Family business. One of the 11 children raised by Jesse and Emily Meggett. We begin with you, Ms. Gretchen. Do you remember the first time you heard the name Emily Meggett? And if you do, what were the circumstances?
I don't necessarily remember the first time I heard of her, but I do remember finally the first time I met her. And it was at a luncheon that a mutual friend had for about 18, 20 women. And MP was one of the women there, and it was, at least for me, love at first sight.
And how did you know, after years of being around the family, how did you know you were unofficially a member of the Meggett family?
Well, when I called her Poochie.
And she answered.
I'm supposed to be talking.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Can everyone in the back hear Ms. Gretchen okay?
I have a big.
Pick up that microphone, love. Pick it up. I promise it comes off, just pull it.
I'm not used to this. MP. I'm sorry, ask me the question again. I got excited.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that time, that moment, the circumstances when you realized
Oh, it's
that you were a
family.
member of the
Well,
family.
early on, she would introduce me as Gretchen Meggett instead of Gretchen Smith. And she would always say that I was her adopted sister. You might be her adopted daughter, but I'm her adopted sister because I'm older. But, and I know Poochie and Marvette remember this, at the end, when MP was still communicating a little bit, but not a lot, I went by a lot to see her, and when I walked in and crawled in the bed beside her, she said, "Did you come to see your sister for the last time?" And I said, "No, I did not." But I always knew that we considered each other family.
As a preservationist, you know a lot about the history of the Meggett family. Can you describe some of what our guests may not know about this family's history on Edisto?
Yeah, well, everybody knows, well, not everybody. Many people know about the Hutchinson house, but the other part of the family history that a lot of people don't know, some of you may be aware that the Edisto Museum donated the Point of Pine slave cabin to the Smithsonian back in 2014. And they essentially built the Smithsonian Museum around that slave cabin, and Lonnie Bunch called it the crown jewel of the museum, the new African American Museum. Well, that house was where MP's husband, Jesse, grew up. And the girls always refer to it They probably do. Well, I mean, leave you out when I talk about the girls. But I always refer to it as grandmama's house. They never thought of it as a slave cabin. And so I think it was 2015, we went, this is a funny story about MP. We were supposed to have about 6 or 8 of the immediate family go up to DC to see the cabin, their grandmama's house in the Smithsonian. They were going to open it up for them. Well, by the time all was said and done, there were 27 of us. She never traveled without a pack. But that's a very important piece of American history that's on display for millions to see, and it's where these folks played at their grandmama's house. But it was such a thrill to be able to go up to the museum with MP and the whole family, and Lonnie Bunch opened it up early for us to go there. They did a program for the family, honored the family, and they were able to see and experience their grandmother's house in the museum when it wasn't open and nobody else was around. It was really a very special event.
And I remember one of the very sweet stories that Miss Emily shared about what life was like in that house and the very few rooms.
Two.
A whole lot
There
of
were
children.
2, yeah, and I think there were 13 that lived in there, yeah. No running water, no electricity originally, and we have a picture of it at our museum where there's a huge, I think 1970s, the last time somebody lived in that house, maybe. There's a huge line of laundry out beside the house, and all I could think of is that y'all did that with no running water and no electricity. And it's just astonishing to see that picture. It's a wonderful picture.
Ms. Gretchen, I think one thing that a lot of people in this room who've had an opportunity to spend any time with Ms. Emily realize that she never spoke with a loud voice, nor an aggressive tone, but when she talked, you knew you should be listening.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's
Yes,
talk-
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Pearls of wisdom that you may have taken from some of your millions of conversations with her, something that perhaps you use every day.
It's not so much conversations I had with her, it was her maybe demeanor and actions. She walked the walk and didn't talk the talk. And so it's more what she did that impressed me, and 2 in particular. One was her inclusiveness, and I said we ended up having 27 people go to DC when I thought, arranged with the Smithsonian, that there were going to be 7 or 8 of us, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And then another time, it was Poochie's 55th surprise birthday party was at my house. And MP said, there'll be 14 people coming. I believe
I know
her.
that's about it.
I set places and had plates for 14 people, and I looked out my window, and it was like a caravan. I have never seen so many. I thought, my God, there goes the 14 plates then. But fortunately, she did the cooking, so we had plenty of food. But the point of both of those stories is that she was inclusive. She had an open door in her life, not just in her kitchen. And the other was, and I've said this, I said it at her funeral, I think. She got accolades from everywhere, the New York Times, CBS News, ABC, I mean, you name it, they were touting her. And I would say, MP, you are a rock star. And she never changed one bit. She was who she was till the end. And it didn't matter who was touting her. And that humility is another trait of hers that I treasure and try to instill in my own house.
Yes, she was not impressed by the accolades, and I
No.
tried to get that out of
Not at
her
all.
in a conversation with her when, of course, the book came out, the cookbook came out, but she wasn't impressed with those kinds of things, and just, as you said, was always very humble. Yeah. You talked a little bit about being in her home, and we also know that there was a very special thing that happened if that side door was open.
Right.
It was a code that everyone
She's
seemed to know.
cooking. She's
Yeah.
cooking.
That people would stop by if that side door was open, and hopefully they would get something to eat, but people also seemed very comfortable with just giving her something so that she could prepare and share with others. I see a lot of head nodding going on. I think a lot of people understand that.
And I think that was true all across the island, whether it was King's Market or the fish market or wherever, there was always a sort of barter system. They would give her food, flowers, sunflowers, whatever, and she would give food, cook food back to them. So she was loved far and wide all across the island.
Is there anything else you want to share right now about your special relationship with her?
Not without crying.
Okay. There's a time for that. Mr. Dodge, your family employed Emily Meggett, which was a very young woman, and you had a very special relationship with her. How, first of all, was she introduced to the family?
You know, it's funny because you sent these questions, and I read that question, and I thought, well, I don't know. And really, honestly, I don't, because she was there before I was. And you know that, but that was the thing is that she was just she was always there. She was always a part of my life, which I have come to appreciate more and more. And it was, I mean, we would come down to South Carolina. I grew up in Colorado and lived there all my life. And we would come down pretty much twice a year, and they were times that I just treasured. And because she was always there.
Just I imagine the comfort that you felt by her presence. I think it's a unique thing when a person's mere presence can give you such comfort, not necessarily because of the food, which probably helped, but just the sweetness of her spirit and her generous, authentic nature.
Yeah, it, you know, I would, we would have whatever the meal was that she would cook, and I would always go down to the kitchen after the meal to pay my respects. And I've thought a lot about that and just what it was, and I've mentioned this to a couple of people here, which is that I don't have any memory of ever having a conversation with either my grandfather or my grandmother. They were there. I have a lot of memories of a lot of conversations and a lot of time hanging in the kitchen with Emily. And I think, you know, as I thought about it, as I was thinking about this, it was, there was a warmth in that kitchen that I really craved. And, you know, I mean, it was the difference between the two parts of the house, such as it was pretty dramatic. And I would go down there and I was at home.
There was a picture that some of you may have seen that was a part of the slide, and it just, as you sit here and you talk, and it's a picture where you are standing, it's in profile of the two of you, and you're somewhat of a giant of a man, but I think everyone recognizes that you have a very gentle soul, and you're standing next to her, and she's, you know, 3 feet shorter, but is a giant of a woman, and that dynamic is so interesting. Clearly she's made such a mark in your life and in your heart.
Well, I guess I would say that there are statures that are physical and there are statures that are not so much.
Yeah.
You know, one of the other things that I've said a lot to myself and others is that there are Christians and there are Christians. And Emily, she was Christian. And You know, I think about, you asked Gretchen about the pearls of wisdom that she imparted on me, and it took me to a moment with my son where I was going off at him about something, and I look over, we were in the car, and he's looking out the window. I said, do you listen to anything I say to you? And he, for some reason, he was 12 and was inclined to be kind of honest. He says, yeah, probably not as much as I should. But what kids do, I realized in that moment, is watch. And what I got to do through my life was watch Emily. And you alluded to that as well, which is that nothing changed her. You know, all of the changes that happened around her and who she was the same person no matter who she was with. And that was really impressive. And just, you know, watching Emily be Emily was you know, that was the pearl of wisdom right there. And I will say that when Emily went into hospice last year, I came down and to pay my respects and all, and it happened to be Easter, and there's this big Meggett gathering, and to all of the members of the Meggett family out there, I could live for 1,000 years and I will never figure your family out. All related. And the thing that I noticed about that gathering was how Emily you all are. Yes. And how welcoming. And you know, it was one of the best Easters I've ever had in my life. Because, you know, and it's like, okay, how are you related to who? And they would tell me, and it would kind of, but she passed that on, and that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah. I didn't ask Miss Gretchen, and I apologize to Miss Gretchen, I will ask you in a moment, but a favorite meal of hers. What says
Fried shrimp.
Fried chicken? Pretty
Fried
quick.
shrimp.
Oh, fried shrimp.
There's a line in her book about you eat potatoes so nobody knows how many you ate. Which was, but you know, the interesting thing about Emily's shrimp was that the tails were delicious. I would count, I would tell everybody, I was pretty proud of it, I would tell everybody how many I ate. That was probably, you know, the fried shrimp and the gumbo, and but you know, it's not just the food. And I was also, you know, another thing I was thinking is that, you know, one of the things that always struck me about Emily was her hands and the way that she would handle and work with the food just had this real magical quality to it that she would, you know, and it would go into everything that she cooked. At least I felt that, and she took care of it. And she, you know, and I think a lot of you, my suspicion is maybe pretty close to anybody that's ever met her has that experience. So, you know, the other way to answer that question is that if she cooked it, it's going to be delicious.
And that amazing quality of making everyone feel as if they are the most important person in her presence at the same time. But she could just as easily dismiss you if you weren't behaving properly or doing whatever she needed you to do at that time. But thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Thanks, y'all.
Ms. Gretchen, I didn't ask you, but I do want to know a favorite Miss Emily meal or dish or whatever you want to
Probably
share.
for weird reasons, I would say her pork chops, because after I had open heart surgery, Dee Dee showed up in the Emily way with her sweet potato cake in the shape of a heart, which I couldn't believe. But MP showed up with her pork chops, so those were my first meal after I had open heart surgery. So that's my favorite.
We'll keep that in this room.
I'm fine now.
Greg, we are going to move all the way down the line to you, if that's okay. Greg is a family member, and it's quite an amazing story, so I'm gonna let you, as Donald said, it's difficult to understand the Meggett family path, so you describe it for us, please.
How's everybody doing?
Yeah.
I notice everybody's calling her Mrs. Emily, but for all of my life, I've known her as MP. So, and that's what I will continue.
Oh, Miss Gretchen corrected me on that a couple of times, MP, so.
As a matter of fact, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody was saying, you know Miss Emily, Miss Emily? I'm like, who is that? she lives down Penfield. I was like, okay, you mean MP. So, but that's the story with that. But how we are related is MP's grandparents, who was Betsy, who was a very great cook in her own right, was my aunt, and her grandfather, William Hutchinson, what we call Uncle Sonny, was my uncle. And they lived right across the field from the Hutchinson house. So we were all part of the same community. The community was the Clark community, and you had the Floods and the Wrights and the Browns and I'm trying to think of some of the other families, the Campbells, and so on and so on. But this was a tight-knit community. My grandmother describes that community, whereas, if they slaughtered a hog, they would call everyone around and everybody could get a piece of whatever the catch was or whatever the animals that was slaughtered, and they took care of each other. If they went in the creek, everybody was able to share because it was a true community, and that's how she was raised in that environment.
You talked about visiting the house. Can you describe those visits?
Are you talking about the cabin or?
Well, you certainly can talk about the cabin, but I meant Miss Emily's house.
Oh, yeah. My cousin MP was the most gracious person that I have ever met in my life. She was so gracious and hospitable. She really was. Even though she was my cousin, I'm a historian for Edisto Island, or one of the historians for Edisto Island. And in that capacity, I got a chance to interview a lot of the elders. I think I see Reverend Patricia Jones and Mrs. Margaret Mitchell. We had a chance to interview some of the elders in the neighborhood. And I sat down and interviewed my cousin MP extensively. And first off, I wanted to say that she had a photographic memory. She really did. She could remember everything. Really to be honest with you, that was her superpower, was that she could remember everything. I remember we went on a car ride and she was able to tell me who lived where and what was going on. And her memory spanned all the way back, vividly to the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, all the way up. So I was able to get a wealth of information from her about Edisto Island. That helped me to write my first book. So I'm very grateful, for all of the wisdom that she imparted to me and my wife. Me and my wife Cheryl has spent many nights with her, and we sat at her kitchen table. We ate with her, and I grew up. Dee was my classmate, so we all grew up together. But I got to know her in a different way as I got older. So I really appreciate that.
One of the ways that you grew closer was talking about what happened and the climate of Edisto in the 1960s. Some people may be unaware of her activism through civil and community rights. So can you describe some of that, some of what she shared with you, and some of what you learned about the climate of Edisto Island in 1960s?
Yes, Edisto Island, I guess it was, if I can say it this way, it was a strange dichotomy. Even though it was Edisto Island, it was almost a tale of two places, if I can say it that way. Back then in 1965, you can remember, the Voting Rights Act was just passed. But Edisto Island was very segregated, extremely segregated. As a matter of fact, the Ku Klux Klan was very active on Edisto Island. When we was able to interview Reverend Washington, he talked about cross burnings and fear and intimidation, throughout the community. As a matter of fact, when it came to voting, a lot of people didn't live on Highway 174. They lived in the fields or back up in the woods. And, even to register, to get to the polls was very intimidating. Because she described to me that at several polling locations, there were white men with shotguns, if you can believe that. And by the nature of her job and where she worked at, it put her in a precarious position, because they would ask people, who you work for, how many people are in the car with you. And that was intimidating, because that could have affected her livelihood. I don't know if I can explain it better than that. But MP was a foot soldier. As a matter of fact, the churches with Reverend McKinley Washington and Reverend Grant at the time, who was at First Baptist, they would organize, around voting and trying to get people to the polls. And the only way they could do that, because not many people had a car, they had to walk. And what they did was they cut through the woods, or they went through the fields, because there was a lot of walking paths. But Edisto now it's a lot different. Everybody used the main road. But back then, they would cut through the paths and go through the woods. And that's how they were able to vote, because they went around the checkpoint that they had set up.
Great. How do you think her activism, certainly her children know about it, and a lot of people in the community probably know about the work that she did, along with those others? You named several people whose names we recognize. But how did people come to regard her as a result of the work that she did?
Well, she was always highly regarded and respected. But, her activism, I would say it shows another dimension of her. And also it showed that she cared. Because if you love people, you have to love justice. I don't know if I can say that right, but it's almost like someone owning a pet. You love that pet, and you don't want them to be mistreated. So her love for people made her want to, be involved in justice and activism and voting and having a voice in the community.
I love that, because she said that all the time, and she talked about loving people. This is a very important part of her legacy that you want people to be aware of. Why is that important to you, Greg?
Well, I mean, you know, I love MP and I love her cooking. And she was a phenomenal cook. And I don't want anybody to forget that. But there's another side of her that people need to know. You know, that she was for fairness. She was for equal treatment. She was for equal justice. You know, she was for everyone having a seat at the table. If I can say it that way. So, and I appreciate that, because as the matriarch, you know, it just adds more respect to what I already had, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well said. And now we want to know what's your favorite recipe in the cookbook?
Everything. Everything. Well, you know, I love to eat anyway, so anything that she cooked, I mean, wow, that's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Greg. Now we are going to ask if you would pass the microphone to the gentleman to your right. Reverend Albert Chick Morrison. There is no question, Reverend Morrison, about Miss Emily's talents when she stood at a stove. But what can you tell us about her appearance when she walked into that church?
First of all, good evening.
Good evening.
Emily Meggett was a class act. And I believe the sign, the picture, will back me up on when I say that. Look at her. Look at that picture. She is somebody to reckon with. When she walked into church on Sunday morning, everyone stands attention. With her fashion, looked like she just came out of the magazine. Attire, hat, dress, purse, and shoes all match. And another thing about, I call her, you know, NP, and I call her sometimes HP. And that is, I know people don't like the nickname, but Highway Patrol. She's very busy. She was very busy across Edisto and beyond. She was a worker. She was a very good, a very kind person. I knew Emily from, I believe I was maybe 13, 14, if I was that old. In the late, mid-50s is when I met her. And Emily was, as I look at it, she was a big sister all of her life, all of my life anyway. We could call on her for anything. And I know I'm going to get to the church part of it, not part of it. But Emily, no matter what you asked her to do, she was willing to do it. And she did it with love. Emily loved people. And you could tell because those of you who knew her, she didn't look at cars, she saw individual. She fed everybody. Young, old, doesn't matter, she fed them. And she tells you what she wants. And we had COVID came in and we brought a lot of food to the church. And Emily got off of the food, out of the food, whatever she wanted, before anybody else did. And she would say to us, and I got witness here, she would say to us, I am feeding the public. And I want whatever she asked for. And again, I have to go back to my parents. I would come home from work sometime, and my mother would say that Sister Emily Meggett was by a day, and she brought food. And she took food. My dad had a garden, and he would make sure she get out of that garden. Emily was one of the most loving person that I've met. And you know something? She had a peculiar way of teasing. She could tease you, but she loved you.
Miss Emily was not only known, of course, as the matriarch of Edisto Island, she was regarded as a mother of the church. Can you talk about her leadership in the church? She was on every committee.
She was very strong in the church. She was, when I came in, and she was one of our secretaries over the years, and not during my time of pastoring, but before. And if you need something in the book, Emily didn't have, or we didn't have typewriters. We had typewriters, but we didn't have computers. But I guarantee you, she can find it and tell you exactly when and how and how long. She had all that information. And sometimes today we can't find it in the computer. She gave of herself to the community, to the church, and across the nation. Whatever you need Emily Meggett to do, Emily stood ready to do it. And the other thing about it that I was so glad for is that I would drive down that road sometime, and Emily's doors were open. You don't have to think about going in. You stop, pull in the yard, she got something on the stove waiting for you. And what she would do, you say, Emily, I don't need it, I'm going off the yard, I'm not going back home. You're going to take it. She was a loving person.
And she openly talked about her love of people. She talked about every time I had a conversation with her, she used that word. She wasn't afraid of making someone feel uncomfortable. She openly talked about love and loving kindness.
She was a lover. And loving not what is said, loving what it does. Emily sure loved, no matter who. She gave of herself. She gave time, her talent, and her money in the church. She'd buy uniform for the youth. She just go that extra mile. I'm going to miss her, the church going to miss her, Ed's still going to miss her, and we already miss her. It was great access to the church.
Her faith was very important to her, and so was fellowship. She enjoyed being in the church, being around other members, and of course her family. Can you talk about her faith and fellowship?
Her faith was strong, very strong. Her fellowship was great. And she comes in again on Sunday morning and other time, and you will know she is in the house. And it's not anything that you would ask her to do. Emily has worked with the church and for the church, not only on Edisto Island, but off of Edisto Island. She has worked on every committee. I wrote them down, but I can't remember all of them. I wrote it down, but I don't want to go through it. But anyway, just to name a few, she was a deaconess in the church, was one of the head committee in the church, missionary department, restoration committee when we remodeled the old church. Emily Meggett was chairperson of the restoration committee. The refreshment committee, she served for years. You name, just to name a few, she was there to help. Whatever you want her to do, Emily was there to do it. And no grumbling, she did it sparingly. And last, well, you may have another question. Emily was a great person in the church, tither. She would call me every end of the month
Thank you, Reverend Morrison. And the question for you as well. What's your favorite recipe in the book?
Well, I guess I have to be a copycat. All except red rice. I'm not a red rice fan.
Well, I'll take yours then. More for me. Thank you, Reverend Morrison. And now we go to Chef B.J. Dennis. More than a friend, a son to Miss Emily. It was often said that stopping at a mom and pop store or a sidewalk pop-up might give Miss Emily food that she didn't necessarily have to pay for. I'm talking about shrimp, crab, tomatoes from locals. Folks very often dropped off bags of food, baskets right outside her door. She was royalty on Edisto. Do you agree?
Totally. I mean, that's beyond anybody's thoughts. The first time I met her, probably like, I can't remember how long ago, about 8 years ago I met Emily. And you know what your elders in our community, they gotta read you first. I mean, she's very welcoming, but she got to check out who these young fellas that in her house, so-called chef. And the relationship, our relationship was short. I came in her life, 7, 8 years ago. That seemed like a long time, but it was a real short time. But it felt like an eternity. Because she was like almost like another grandmother to me. I mean, she saw my son before some of my immediate aunts, the cousins saw my son. I mean, she was like that for me. So, this is hard to really describe because there was such a spiritual connection with us. Memories that I walk around my house or be doing stuff in my day-to-day and I can hear her talk to me. I'm cooking something on the stove and she says something to me. I can hear her voice. So it's, she was royalty. She embodied what a lot of women in our culture in Sea Islands embody. She was a representative for Edisto. She was a representative she was that light that we see through many of our folks on these Sea Islands in our culture. But there's only one Emily Meggett.
When you were in her company, just listening to her, were you taking mental notes of how to not only be a chef, but also how to be a parent?
So I went from, when she first met me, I was one of her boyfriends. She got me mad. I didn't mean to say that. Y'all know I tell the truth. So when she first met me, she didn't meet my, at the time when I was my girlfriend, who was not my wife, so she didn't meet her yet. And then she met her, and she fell in love with her. And then she would tell me, you better treat her right. She would just drop jewels on me on how to make sure you maintain a marriage. Happiness. How you make sure that you do right by your partner. I think our relationship and our conversations, it spans so much. And sometimes so much information inside you that you forget it, but you don't forget it. If that makes sense? Because it's there, but when it needs to come out, it comes out at the right time. And that's what Emily did for me. Like our conversations, I mean, it ran from her grandmother, her history, to the woman who taught her how to cook, to old dishes, to old vegetables that she don't remember seeing anymore that her grandmother used to grow, to my life. I mean, Emily was, I now live down outside of Beaufort County near Port Royal. And I'm always home in Charleston. I would come down these stretches, and I probably get to Jacksonboro, like, oh, I need somebody to talk to. I call Emily, and next thing you know, I realize I'm at my parents' house, sitting in the yard for 30 minutes, she's on the phone. That's just the relationship we had. It's surreal that, she's no longer here. I mean, I was able to see her. I remember holding her hand in the bed when she was laying in the bed, and she could hear my voice, and told her I love her. And I said, the word I can know is MP. She squeezed my hand real hard. I never forget that. Because I never forget her. There's not a lot of people in your life, and I do a lot of travel up and down the Gullah Geechee. And I say, well, a lot of elders, they really mean a lot. They're Emily and many like her are the last of a generation. And like they were saying earlier, she got a full genetic memory. I mean, she's talking about going in the rice pond on Saturday, her grandmother's rice pond on Saturday, to pick rice, pound rice, fresh rice for Sunday dinner. Old culture. Things that, for me as a chef, or the work that I do resonates to me because it helps me out with my trajectory and what I do and the work that I stand for.
Chef BJ, I recall seeing you at Miss Emily's 90th birthday party. You were there with your wife and the new baby, and I remember at one point you were holding her hand, and you know what I remember about that? Her nails. Remember, she had the 90 on her nail. Tell me about being at that 90th birthday party and how it really was a community celebration of a life well lived.
That day, I got there a little late. We got I guess our son was a little 1.5. So whoever had kids, y'all got sure, you say you get somewhere at a certain time. That don't happen. So we got there a little late. But just seeing her, but I'm gonna be real with the audience. That was that moment I said, okay, I feel like they starting to call her home. That was that time when I saw her, and I was like, I don't know when, and I don't want to put mouth on nobody, so I just said it to myself. I was looking at her, and I could feel that vibe. It's like, okay, the job, that one last great thing you wanted to get done was this book, and it's done. And I was like, I don't want this to happen, but this is how it's supposed to happen. And I just saw, I was like, I don't know when, but I felt like, okay, it's time to go home. And that's what I saw when I was there. I was like, she's ready, it's time. Oh, yeah. And that's for me. That was that moment. So I went home and I told my wife, I said, it's almost time. I don't know when. I'm going to keep it to myself, but I just felt that vibe. Yeah. But she got what she wanted to get done. And many people can't say that in life.
Yeah, right.
So that was a 90th for me. That's
It was a celebration.
It was a celebration, and it was that time. I knew. I said, you know what? I don't know when, but it's soon. So, but it was a celebration. Sometimes you celebrate, even though you know. Like I just felt that vibe. But I mean, look at what Miss Emily did these last 2 years before she passed.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to tell her that. They say, I will make sure you write. I was tell her that. You will be, look, this book will come out. You will make sure this book come out. Because she already did the heavy work on that book. She already did the heavy work. just needed a little push.
I think people should also be aware of your generosity toward Ms. Emily. I know a lot of people are shaking their heads saying, yeah, this story could have turned out differently. When you were presented with the idea of moving forward with a cookbook, you steered the attention to her to ensure that her cookbook would come out.
Yeah, so I met the publisher, Abrams, Jonah, probably 2 years before. He came with another group of folks. I did a catering for some folks, and he was there. I don't really remember who he was, but I saw him at, actually, I think at Emily's house. But I got an email, so technically, I got an email from him about, he was curious about a book, and truthfully, I already signed a cookbook deal, and I'm probably miss some points, bits and pieces, but at that time, I was coming around, and Elliot, who's not here today, and his mother, they've been working on the book. So he told me that BJ, we're gonna get this book out. I said, okay, and I said, oh, this book look good. And I was thinking the book was gonna come out just locally. Because a lot of times, I wasn't thinking about it at that moment, but a book like that, a national publisher is not gonna pick up a book that's usually done. And her book was pretty much done, in my opinion. So I got this email from randomly around the same time about a cookbook. When I got the email, I still got it on my phone. And I just told him, I said, hey, I signed already with a publisher, but I know somebody whose story is way more important than mine. Whose voice is way more, her history and her story is way more. I'm in this new generation. I'm talking about a woman who can tie back to the days of enslavement to the modern days. I said, her book is almost pretty much done, but if you just give her an opportunity to hear it out and me connect you with the family, and pretty much that's how it happened. You know, a lot of times in life when you've been blessed, and I've been very blessed with what I've been doing. I've been at it for like 11 years now, with just pushing, fellow culture through food and history. And I've been very lucky in this kind of new generation to have a quote-unquote platform, but they say these accolades, but what is that about not sharing with those who've been doing this work, who've been here before me, who are the ones who set the groundwork for me to do what I'm doing. And they were doing that because it was a way of life, it was survival, it was a way to take care of their families. So I wanted to make sure that her voice got out there. I didn't think that it would have went the way it went. I was like, okay, so when they were like, oh, Abrams want to pick up the book, I was elated because, the publisher world is difficult, and you probably speak on it, like a lot of times they're not going to take a book that's already been pretty much completed. But they took it, and like I always say, spirit for no spirit. And it was just right timing. Right. You get placed in people's lives for a reason. We work in each other's lives for a reason. And that was one of many, many, many reasons.
I know that you could probably share a lot about what you learned in terms of cooking from Miss Emily. One thing I learned was being in her kitchen about the eyeballs in the grits. No, that's not funny, Kushi. That's not funny, Kushi. So I thought I knew how to make grits. I did not. Does anyone know what I'm talking about with the eyeballs in the grits? You gotta wash the grits and little eyeballs, as you call them, come to the surface. I'm wondering what you learned.
Wow, what I learned from Emily in the kitchen, that's because our conversation just ran so deep. Like, I think what I learned more than anything else, it's so much I learned from her. And we had so much conversations, our conversations would go all over the place. I think what I learned was really deeper than food. It was stay true to yourself. She was very proud of somebody pushing our culture through food. I could be out here doing anything else. I could be cooking in some kitchen and all these accolades. Could be working in some fancy restaurant downtown. But I chose to step on my own to be out here to represent us. And she saw that. And she was just proud of that. But I think more than anything, what I took from Emily is just the heart, the spirit. You know, I can't even describe to y'all what I learned from her. Because there's some things that you just around some people that you just gonna get, that you just not gonna get. I can't explain it if I'm not around the person. Like, you gotta be there in the moment. So, I think more than anything else, it's just a sense of community. Always know that it's not just about you. It's about what you do for everybody else. Not to be selfish. And make sure I take care of my wife. But it's just a spirit. It was I don't really have words to really explain because I can't explain it. I'll be honest.
I think you explained it beautifully. What's your favorite from the cookbook?
Well, I got the cookbook last year. Like, you got the cookbook. I was one last year to get the cookbook. Let me see. Wow, we cooked together. Now, Hopper John, something serious. You know, you just pull up to the house, now Hopper John, you know, and I'd be like, I'll tell Emily, I'm coming over, like, you don't got to worry about cooking nothing. She's gonna put something cornbread together real quick. Proper fry, fry you some fish. But I would say, okra soup, everything. Okra rice. That's one of my favorite things. The okra pearl with shrimp. And her little crabs. She sent me home with some one time. She sent me home with them. One time I haven't had the devil crabs. She sent me home with them. And I was like, wow. I said the best I've had outside of the people on Head Island. These were like all crab, no filler, hand pick. Actually, I think that the same time I sat with her, we were hand picking crabs. I might come from the same batch, but the devil crabs and the okra rice. But favorite meal, I mean, really is not just her. My favorite meal was her. Who she was. Because it was more than just food, like this would talk. And she would talk history. Like the history. Like her memory wasn't full. She would look at herself as a kid. And I'm telling her, like, I remember last week. So yeah. What she embodied as a human being.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Trelody, you arrived at Miss Emily's home with the intention of giving context to her life. It was an interesting time because we were in COVID. What did you think when you walked into that house?
Ooh. When I walked into the house, well, first I want to start off by saying, okay, I'm one of two co-authors. Kayla Stewart is the chief co-author, so I want to put that out there. So she lived with, how long? 3 weeks. She lived on the island, coming from New York, so busy city to Edisto Island. So a lot of my conversations were by phone. I'm living in Savannah right now, but also back in Savannah, I'm a writer, but I'm also an oral historian. So I would spend a lot of time, particularly during COVID, I would spend a lot of time with the elders who didn't have a lot of people. So I was really nervous about going there because I was like, if I get hurt, we were really afraid of COVID at the time, and still, but so if I give her something, I never give myself. But when I finally got there, it was familiar. So it was spiritually familiar. So a lot of things I think what I'm gonna say, because every time I was hearing people talk, I was like, that's what I was gonna say. That side door being open, I think that was her unique aspect, because so many grandmamas can cook, right? Although she can cook phenomenally well, so many can cook. But I think it was her accessibility and the depth of her knowledge, and it was just like she was a griot. In addition to knowing, how to cook, how to serve, she knew the old ways too. But when I walked in that house, walked in that side door, and I saw, first of all, I walked in, it was a lot of families, a lot of people in the house. So I'm like, So to me, that already communicates something. something, I'm like, you're loved. You have to be, I had already spoken to her on the phone multiple times, but you have to be a genuinely good person to have your children even still want to stick around like that. You know, because like I said, y'all, I have many grandmothers, like over 50 grandmothers, but not everybody got that blessing like that to where, you know, they people just want to be with them like that. So that was the first thing that I recognized. That wood stove was another thing that I recognized. And she made sure she pointed out that I told my kids, do not touch my wood stove, I'm not getting rid of it. Number 3, it was food on the stove already. She wanted to feed me, and it was the shrimp and grits, that gravy. It was a fried shrimp. That's how I like mine. Like if I have shrimp and grits, I like it to be fried shrimp. And it was like, yes, it was so good, and it was fresh, local shrimp. And that is a major difference in today too. It wasn't no, you know, she bought out the bag at the grocery store and eat. Another thing, though, I had my daughter with me. I had just taken her cell phone, so she was mad at me. And she was mad I'm bringing her to her. It was like, she's taking me to work. So we sit there, and then Miss Emily, you know, look at her. She was like, what's wrong with you? She was like, my mama took my phone. Well, do you know why your mama took your phone? She loves you. That's why, because she wants the best for you. And she was like, now go outside with my granddaughter. I am one of those, you know, someone protecting mother in your town. Like, oh, she's okay. She can sit here with me, but I trusted her. Going outside. And she was outside probably like 7-8 hours. But those are my initial impressions.
I had the same amazing first meal with Miss Emily, so I definitely understand that. Just that little bit of crispiness on the shrimp is well appreciated. Miss Emily made dishes that seem complicated to someone like me who doesn't cook. But she made them seem simple with her humor and with her grace. She made me feel like even I could prepare this. Can't, but I felt that way. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, so just like I think, Donna, you said it's like a magical feeling towards it too. Yeah, so one of the ways I feel like I organically watched her cook, because it was outside the home, so it wasn't like recipe testing or anything, but I went to the museum. I saw some jewelry that I liked in there. What's the guy's name? Because I like to call names. Kareem. So I was like, she's like, I'll take you to his house. So she took me to Kareem's house to go buy some jewelry, and Kareem was like, I was hoping, how do you know I wanted you to stop by? Can you make me some crab cakes? And his old lady begged, and she sat there, and she did. She agreed, and he had canned crab, but you know, she opened in the way that she just took her time. She was very patient with it. She used what she had, the way and that's a kitchen that wasn't hers. That was Kareem's house. But the way she just maneuvered the space, it's like she owned, it's like she owned the space, and she was just so naturally comfortable in it, because a lot of questions, because I cook too, not for people, but I cook too, and I'm a pretty good cook, so some of the questions that I would ask her sometimes was like, for one, you cooking on a wood stove, and I know like the kind of stove you cook on can kind of like determine the outcome of your food. Like, does that matter? The kind of pots and pans you use matter. A lot of times people today using a lot of Teflon and, you know, the real cheap pots, you know, so you're using good dishes, does that matter? You know, but I'm like, oh, you're in a whole other space with somebody else's stuff, and you still created exactly what's, and it was good, still good, crispy on the outside, delicious. And another thing that I love about it too, because it takes us back to the old ways, like today we tend to cook, like my seasoning cabinet is so full of all kind of seasonings from all things. When I cook, I use some but it's like the simplicity of the seasonings that she would use too. Of course, a lot more chopping than shaking, I would say, but even the shaking, some salt, some pepper, some garlic powder. It was so simple, and I think that just takes us back to just the essence of how things are and should be. You know, it's like, because it didn't subtract from the flavor. It was still amazing. So yeah, so it was just like that gracefulness, that patience, and how she do things. And
Charlotte, you are a historian, you're a writer and an author. Talk about that experience of listening to her tell stories and then preparing those stories for the book. How did you choose? Because there were millions of stories.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. Just having to say, okay, which ones can go in, and then decide, saying, we want these in there, and then the editor come back like, oh, I can't. I'm like, what? But one, she's a natural storyteller. I was even on the way up here, because I drove in from Savannah, I was re-listening, because I talked the majority on phone. Before and after the book, I recorded our phone calls, so I still had access to them. So I was listening to a lot of them on the way here, and I was just like, she has a beautiful demonstration of showing us how, like, particularly as Black folk, our language is naturally so vivid, you know, and so sing-songy and just so alive and dynamic. And so one of the things she was saying too was like, you know, I'm like the old woman in the shoe. I got so many kids, I don't know what to do. And it's like in other things, like instead of saying like, you know, maybe like we weren't broke, or we didn't have, you know, we had money, and she would say like, you know, we didn't go naked. You know, it's just like, it was a visual language, and I was like, yes, that's who we are. So just like BJ was really emphasizing, particularly just like she is the most beautiful bridge of the past to the present, and I feel like that was like the biggest impact for me personally, because, you know, a lot of like history is puzzle pieces, and so many of our people in general, but elders particularly, you know, they bring some pieces and you can fit them together and to make sense of things, but there always will be a few missing, and Miss Emily brought like so many pieces. She knew so much. Even I could take some of the stories that people had told me and bring it to her, and she could say, oh, yeah, here's why. So I didn't have to actually add a lot of context. What I would have to do a lot of times, because Kayla, she's a chief writer, excellent writer. But she didn't grow up in Gullah Geechee culture. So a lot of those times, that's what I would ground it in. So for example, so if she said like, when you all were in school, were you taught Gullah Geechee language? I'm like, no. No, as a matter of fact, you know, we kind of to counter that, but yeah, so those stories, yeah, I mean, just when you were riding, she took me riding. I don't know which one of y'all said it, but when we got in the car, she was like, don't let her take you all day, Charlie. I don't know who said it. We're going for a long time. I thought we were going to go to the museum and come back. I felt kidnapped. But we were riding, and it was just like she, you know, oh, that's the post office, but that used to be that, and that's just like he said, like we will cut through this path, she would stop the car too. No people behind us. They was having to drive around. That used to be there. We will cut through this pathway here, and we used to grow asparagus right here. I was like, we can grow asparagus? Like, I'm thinking like, I can have asparagus, and I was like, 1920. I'm like, asparagus is going on here? You know, so she knew so much and told, oh man, it was just, yeah. And then even like another time too, because she would say, you know, me and y'all might have heard it before, like, if you dream of fish, what that means? You pregnant, somebody pregnant. She was like, that was not my experience. I dreamed of Buddha. And that let me know I was pregnant every single time. And Buddha's turtles, for those who are Jewish. Every single time I dreamed of a turtle, that let me know I was pregnant. So I'm like, I like that. I like that, the way that you can, you know, you got culture and you got like, folklore or the typical way. And she was like, actually my experience is something totally different. And so it's like, it was so many good stories to pull from.
Do you have a favorite recipe from the cookbook? You spent a lot of time with that book and listening to her.
Mine was the better than sex cake. And I ain't even tried to make it yet because I'm intimidated. But I had hers particularly, and when I was about to go back home, leave her house, she gave me a to-go box full of it because it was like the last of it, so I got like a lot. And so when I was riding, I opened it up and I was like, oh, this might not make it home, you know, so let me just go ahead and start eating. I had to pull over. That cake was and it was so much on it. When she, I was like, oh, you ain't gotta get that much. I'm like, I don't really like the shit. I don't like shit. Like, oh. I was like, man, I tore that whole plate up. But, and it's so much too I wanted to say too about like the values. I believe that was the most important thing too. And I teach a lot of, I open up a summer camp. So I sit middle schoolers down with elders and give them an audio recorder. So they did ask the questions. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to the youth, I let them know, I share a lot of the stories. And the biggest one though is like the values. So a lot of times today, like capitalism can infuse push its values on us. So a lot of times we become individuals, and particularly with the kids, it's like, I'll sleep when I die, money over everything, me against the world. And it's just like, nah, y'all, like, so it's this quote that really sticks with me. It's an African proverb that says, like, if a child doesn't feel the warmth of a village, it'll burn the village down to feel its warmth. And I feel like Miss Emily did a really good job of making sure that everybody felt warm. Like, my very first conversation with her, and you know, they go long too. I was calling her on my way home. It was supposed to be real quick, like 15 minutes, and we was on the phone like an hour and 23 minutes. It was recorded, so I got the exact time. But and that, she said, you know, I'm a second mother to you. And I'm like, dang, like, you don't even know me yet. Like, I know we had a good conversation, so like, let me get there, and I promise you gonna love me. But you know, so it's like, yeah, that warmth and just that giving back, and another thing is like activism ain't just protesting, bullhorn, voting, pushing. Activism is feeding your people, it's making sure that people feel love, it's affirming she loved her kids. She loved her kids, and that's one thing that she said in like the one, and I started crying when I heard that, when she said, you know, I gave my all, I put my all in this book, and then she said, not everything, I saved some for my kids, but you know, I gave my all, I put my all, you know, I wanted, you know, put it in this book, and saying, and you know, just, you know, I'm so proud of my children. I made sacrifices. You know, my grandmother, who was my mother, she raised me. My mama was up in New York, and when I got pregnant at a very young age, my grandmother told me, you have a choice, and that choice is going to take you from earth to glory. And you got a choice. You're gonna finish school, you're gonna stay home and raise the children. And she was like, I chose to stay home and raise my children. I have never regretted my decision a day in my life. My children are doing wonderful for themselves. So-and-so in the hospital, so-and-so in the hospital, so-and-so in the hospital, so-and-so on Wall Street, so-and-so in Bern, went to the military. She just laid it all out. I'm just like, and that just reminded me too, like when you talk about your kids, the people affirm, talk big up them kids. Like her kids were superstars. So like, talk up. Don't just, you know, I don't care what they're going through too, just lift them up in all ways, so yeah.
Melanie, do you think that she made you an even more powerful mother? Your daughter had a chance to meet her. Did anything about the way you guide your own daughter change as a result of your experience with Miss Emily?
Yeah, and I think that happened in a subconscious way. Yeah, I didn't really think about it in the moment, but I was like, yeah, just being more graceful, being more patient, and just looking at the bigger picture of things. Because sometimes, you know, life can just, I'm tired. And so you coming over here, and it's like, you got this going on, but it's like, no, like, I'm gonna just take my time. But then too, you know, I ain't gonna say like, I try to be a friend, but you know, a lot of times you try to find that balance. But like with that, when she was saying, you know, what's wrong with you? You gonna be all right. Go outside. So I was like, I take that approach too. You gonna be all right. I'm trying to get you in that hospital, this school teacher, the military. I'm trying to get you where you need to be. You gonna be all right. But yeah. So she modeled a lot of everything. But build more than anything, patience. That was just patience. Another thing, I'm sorry. But one more story on that patience, I love when she was saying, because like I said, a lot of times we just want, we desire, we want a bigger house and this thing and that thing. She was like, we didn't go on our first, like our real honeymoon until like, well, how many decades later we went to, a lot of decades, and she was like, you know, we slowly added on to the house. And I was like, yes, it can all be so simple, word Lauren Hill. You know, we're just like, you know, we tend to want the bigger house. And no, she took it slow, and it's like, and they were good. So learning the balance of contentment with all we had, yeah.
It's beautiful. Let's talk about the growth of that house. The growth of that house was mandated by the children of Emily and Jessie Meggett. And there were a lot of children. I'm going to try this. Forgive me if I mess up. Christopher, Mildred, Lizanne, Louise, Ronald, Carolyn, Laverne, Elizabeth, Marvette, Joanne, Emily. Is that correct? So I did a podcast with Miss Emily last year, and Jimmy and I were listening to the podcast as we drove in. And I asked Miss Emily about her children cooking. This is where things get uncomfortable. And I said, Miss Emily, can all of your children cook? You don't have to really say, don't name it. She said, Marvette can't. So as soon as we walked in today, Marvette hurried up to me and said, I prepared all of this. To which there was a loud guffaw. Oh, please stop. Not true. But I love that she, you know, you should know your lane. And Marvet clearly knows her name, knows her lane. But that's when you love people and people love you, that you can share that kind of candor and real conversation. It's all in love. Poochie, did your mother have a favorite dish?
Well, first of all, let me say good evening to everybody. Thanks for being here. And I would say that, yes, my mom did have a favorite dish because she could serve that dish for breakfast, she could serve it for lunch, or she could serve it for dinner. And that would be the shrimp and gravy with grits with homemade biscuits. And so it didn't matter what time of the day she made it, or if she was going out to feed somebody, they just loved it. And it was a simple meal for her. So I would have to say that was her favorite meal.
Can you describe some of the family traditions that will continue? No one dare think about changing, even though your mother is not physically in this place anymore?
Well, one of the things that we wouldn't change, I was living at my mom's house. My mom had this rule that when we were young and going to school, every morning you had to eat breakfast before you go to school. And I said, Lord, if I ever get grown, I am not eating anybody's hot breakfast. I had it all my life, but her theory was that a child shouldn't go to school on an empty stomach because then you don't learn well. And so I have grown to appreciate that, but I still don't eat a hot breakfast every day. Not at this point in time in my life, like my mom, made us eat a hot breakfast every day before we went to school. And we always had to go to church every Sunday, regardless of what you did the night before. Sunday morning, you was going to get up and you were going to church. That was just the rules in her house. And so we always celebrated birthdays, Thanksgiving was a must, Christmas was a must, and Easter, it was like Easter was Christmas because we had the turkey for Easter, we had the ham for Easter, so you think you was having Christmas all over again. So those were some of the traditions that we had growing up, and we wouldn't change that for anything. Those things are instilled, in our hearts. And I think for my mom, it was the value and the morals that she instilled in us. And even today, Thanksgiving, everybody's coming home to Mama's house at Thanksgiving. So those are the things that we will not change.
When you were growing up, did you have any idea that something special was happening in your home? First of all, the other thing I also think is very interesting is how your home changed. There were so many children, and the addition that your parents put on at the back of the house as your family grew. But did you know that anything amazing was happening, or was this just your life and you just accepted it for your version of normal?
Well, I think it was just our life at home because we had a good home life. And my mom would go to work sometimes and she'll come home. Like, for instance, she worked on Edisto Beach. And there was a young lady by the name of Meg Jenkins who's sitting in the corner over there. And during that time, it really wasn't a good thing for blacks and whites to mix. But Meg didn't know that because Meg was a child. We're about the same age. So my mom worked for the Boltons, but then sometimes she would work for the Jenkins family as well. So Meg was a little bit jealous. And so when my mom was at the Boltons' house, Meg would walk down the street, I don't know how far it was, maybe almost a half a mile or a mile. And my mom would be in the kitchen working and she would open the cabinet and there's Meg underneath the sink. And so she would say to Meg, take this biscuit and go home and don't come back. So Meg would take the biscuit and she would go home. And then when my mom came home from work, there was this little white girl laying in the back of the car that my mom had no idea she was there. And so my mom gets home and there's Meg. She says, Meg, what are you doing in this car? And she says, well, Amy, I just want to be with you. So my mom would bring her in, wash her clothes, take her back the next morning, to her parents' house. But Meg didn't, I would say she didn't know any better. She probably didn't know any better, but she just couldn't get enough of my mom. And so my mom brought a lot of people home with her, and they stayed in the house with us. And we just felt like it was just this one great big happy family, because that's the type of person that my mom was. And we were used to sleeping in the bed together. My mom and dad started off with a 4-bedroom house, and you got 10 children. So we had 2 beds in one room, and so 9 girls and 1 boy. 4 girls stepped to the head. 2 girls stepped to the head of the bed, 2 girls stepped to the foot of the bed. And I think that's what makes us really close as a family, because children now, it's like, that's my room. They don't want you in their room, and they're not going to dare sleep in the same bed with their siblings. So I think when you have that close knit, I think it makes you, I think it makes you a better family. And so my mom would bring all of these children home, black, white, whatever, and they stayed right there in the same house we stayed in. So we didn't see a change in the house because that's who my mom was, And she taught us how to love people and bring people into the fold. That was very important to her. But then everybody that came, they knew that they was going to get a good meal also. So, it was
Love and a good meal.
right. So we didn't see a change in the household, and it could have been, but we didn't see it that way.
Do you remember the first conversations about a cookbook? And growing up, you're enjoying this delicious food. Is that something that any of you ever talked about? Like, mommy should do this, mommy should put a cookbook together. And if you don't remember that, the first conversation's about an actual cookbook, which everyone, I'm sure, already knows. Ms. Emily was the person who has this best-selling cookbook, but didn't own a cookbook herself.
Yeah, right. She never owned a cookbook. And so the first time we heard about a cookbook was with her best friend, Becky Smith. So Becky Smith and her family, they lived in Florida part of the year, and then they came to Edisto Beach and lived the other part of the year. And when Becky met my mom, it was just something magical about that relationship. It just, was love at first sight. And Becky could not get enough of my mom. She would come and sit on the floor at my mom's house at her feet. And so one day she said to her, Emmy, you should write a cookbook because the world needs to know who you are. And of course she gave Becky some pushback, a lot of pushback, because she said to Becky, she says, I'm not going to do a cookbook because she felt like it would restrict her in the way that she cooked, because she never cooked by a recipe and she never measured anything. So that was, that's why she felt like she would be restricted if she did a cookbook. And then Becky finally convinced her, well, Emmy, if you do this cookbook, look at what a legacy you would leave for your children. And at the time, she didn't really think about that. She thought about the restrictions that somebody would put on her. And so Becky did some more talking to her and then convinced her. And then she finally saw the bigger picture of it. yes, I could leave this legacy for my family if I did do this cookbook. And so, then things started happening. Becky's children would come over, they would take pictures, they would write stuff down. The measurements weren't right at the time, but, it was a starting point. And so that's when we first heard about the cookbook. And then, we would all participate and, help out with it.
Can you share your mother's reaction to this amazing accolade of writing a best-selling cookbook?
Well, when I got the email, I got a telephone call and said, the publisher was screaming on the other end of the phone, and she says, "Oh, your mom's book made the New York Times bestseller list." And, we were all excited and happy. And I called her, because I was at home in Columbia. I called her and I says, "Mommy," I says, "what are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I'm just sitting here at the table." I says, "Well, I got some really good news." I says, "Your book made the New York Times bestseller list." She says, "Oh, really?" I says, did you hear what I said? And she was like, "Yeah, I heard what you said." She's like, "I heard what you said, but it didn't faze her one way or the other." It was like, it is what it is. So, nothing changed her when it came to that book. She was just...
Carol, can I interject one thing?
Yes, please.
MP was never struck back, but the three of us would be shrieking all the time. Every time something new would occur, we would just like, Carrie, now I'm like crazy.
Right, but it didn't faze her at all. She was still this real humble, person that she always is, and nothing, it didn't matter to her one way or the other.
When I asked her the question, she said the same thing. She said, the children are happy. And as anyone in here knows, if your children are happy, you're happy. So she absolutely said that. I'm also curious, Poochie, what Mr. Meggett would say about the many superlatives your mother has enjoyed, particularly over the last 2 years.
My dad, our dad, he was a man of very few words, very few words. But he liked to tease my mom at some point, because he knows that he had all of the girls on his side, and my mom only had, the one boy. My other brother, Ronald, the two boys. And so I know that he would be particularly proud of her because he knows how much my mom loved to cook and how much she loves to entertain. And he would say to us sometimes, "Look at your mom. She's in her glory now because she's cooked and people are over here eating, and that's what she enjoys the most." And so I know that he would be particularly proud of her, and sometimes he would call her old gal. So I could probably hear him saying, "Old gal, you've done good," is probably what he would say to her. He would be proud of her.
Your mom was very humble, very mild, but she was a force. I remember, and one of the Lee brothers is here, we had a chance to share the stage during the Southeastern Wildlife Expo, and she wasn't feeling 100%, this was in February, but she was determined to be on that stage. So she was, even in a very interesting way, she was a showman. She could entertain a crowd.
She could, and so we'd made plans, my sister Dee Dee and myself and Nisi, we'd made plans because they wanted her to prepare some hoppin' jump. And so she wasn't feeling well, she was sick at this point, and so we said, well, Mommy, we'll make the Hoppin' John, and, you know, we'll take it out to the place. And so we made all of these plans, and so I went back home to Columbia, and I came back to Edisto that Friday night before the show on Saturday. So I walk in, and she's not feeling her best, and she says to me, I'm going to do my own demonstration tomorrow. So I look at her and I says, what? She says, I'm going to do my own demonstration tomorrow. So I says, Mommy, are you sure? She says, yes. I said, well, I need to make a few phone calls. So I called Matt Lee and I says, Matt, my mom has decided that she's coming tomorrow. And so they had this great big tent. I said, could you just please make sure that, you know, we could get her in, get her on the stage, because she's in a wheelchair at this time. And I said, so we need some heat. And he's like, don't worry about it. We're going to make it happen. So I don't know what they did that Friday night, but Saturday morning when we got there, they were ready for Miss Emily. So we got in. They got her up on stage in her wheelchair. Carol Murray was there, and she had an audience of about 200 people. They were all sitting on the floor everywhere because everybody heard about Miss Emily coming to demonstrate how to make this Hoppin' John. And she did it.
She did it.
Yeah, she did it. You know, she wasn't feeling 100%, but she was determined that she was going to do it, and that me, Dee Dee, and Lucy was not going to show people how to do it. So that's just my mom, because her word was her bond. And if she said to you that she was going to do something, then she was going to do just that. And so, you know, just a remarkable woman, you know, all around. You know, she was just that type of a person. And I always say, you know, I thank God that He chose her to be our parents because of the things that she taught us and the things that she instilled in us. You know, and I give God thanks and praise, you know, daily, because He allowed her to be that force and that presence in our life. And I was just proud to call her Mommy, you know, very proud to call her Mommy. And out of all of the children that my mom had, I'm child number 8, so my mom had 7 children prior to me. I was the first child that came along and said, Mommy. Everybody else called her MP. And so it's just the 3 youngest that calls her Mommy, and everybody else calls her MP. So I don't know why that is or how it is, but that's how it happened. But she's my mommy. She was and still is the love of my life. She was my everything, you know. And you know, when you have a good mother, or if you just have a mother, period, regardless of what God gives you for a mother, just be thankful and grateful for that, you know. And you know, when I hear people say, I don't get along with my mom, I'm thinking, what? You don't get along with your mother? You know, to me, that's just, I don't know, something, you know, I never really experienced with my mom. And, you know, and my mom was a great force, and she still is. And Gretchen always say, she's still rocking it from the grave. And she is. And so, it's just so funny because her presence is so real and it's so strong. So yesterday I picked up Donald from the airport last night. So I told him on the way, I said, well, Donald, we did a lot of work to the house. I said, but we still have some pictures to hang and we have some curtains to hang. So he says, okay, I'll help you hang the pictures. And so I had some paintings done when I was in Korea, my mom, myself, and my sister Joanne, who is deceased. And so the first picture that we put back up on the wall, the painting, was mine. And so we had to wrestle with it a little bit. Donald's like, no, that's not straight, it wasn't hanging right, so we wrestled with it for a little bit. So then, the second painting that we put up, Donald did, it was my mom's. He put it on the wall, it fell in place, we didn't have to do anything with it. So I looked at Donald and I says, Donald, I says, Mommy knows that you are here because that picture, he put it up, it was straight and it never moved. And so I know that her presence is still there with us, you know, every single day her presence is there, and it's real.
Well, I think on behalf of everyone in this room, we thank you and your sisters and your brothers for sharing her with us, especially over the last 2 years. Regardless of the word we used to call her, she always answered. She answered with love and hopefully a meal. We certainly appreciate it. You guys generously shared her with us, and we will take those lessons with us. Thank you so much. Last question. This is a final question, and we are hopeful that everyone has enjoyed the program so far. There is a lot more to come, and so thank you so much for your patience. The conversations were just incredible. But Poochie, if you were able to spend one more day with Mommy, can you describe what that day would be like?
Well, that day for me wouldn't be any different than any other day. Because like I said earlier, my mom, she was my everything. And so we always did things together. And you know, I always took care of her. Dee would tell me sometimes, you spoil her, you know, you need to quit spoiling her, but she was my everything. And I wouldn't do anything different because I always spent time with her. And we always took very good care of her. And so I would come home, we would spend a lot of time together. She would come to Columbia, that would be some of the best times, you know, ever. I would invite people over, we'd have a feast, and they would love it, especially in Christmas time. And, you know, so even when she got sick, you know, we took care of her, told her how much, you know, we loved her, we played music for her. And so we just always spent good quality time with her. And I think that that time, you know, spending time with your parents to me is just so important. And I would call my mom 4 or 5 times during the day, and she would always say, are you spying on me? Why are you calling me? I said, I'm just calling to see, you know, what you're doing. And sometimes I call, and if she's not at home and she didn't say, well, she had a doctor's appointment or something or whatever, I'll be calling all over, Dee, you know where Mommy is? I've even called Gretchen. Gretchen, you seen that woman today? Or whatever, but it's just that concern that I had for her and the love that I had for her, because she was just a remarkable woman, just a good woman. And you know, she would tell me the same stories over and over and over, but you never got tired of listening to those stories. And you know, you sit by her and you just enjoy the times that you had with her. So that last day wouldn't be any different from any other day. And even when she got sick, I would go in the room every day and I would rub her hair, you know, back, and you know, tell her how much we loved her. And on Easter Sunday morning, when Donald was there, Donald left, he went to church, and so she was calling for Dee. So she says, Dee, come here. So I said, well, Dee not here yet. Dee's gone home. So I says, what do you need, Mommy? And she says to me, she looks at me in the bed, she gave me this great big smile, and she says, bring me my keys. And I says, bring me your keys? She says, yes, bring me my keys. So I says to her, I says, where are you going? She says, bring me my keys I'm going home. So my response to her was, you're going home as in with the Father and the Son, and we finished the sentence together. And she said, and the Holy Ghost. And so I said to her, because I felt like sometimes they need that confirmation that it's okay, because they know that they're on their way out and they're at peace. And so I looked at her and I said to her, I says, Mommy, I says, it's okay. You know, if, you know, this is what you want to do, I says, it's okay. And she was all right. She was all right with that. And so sometimes I think you just have to know that a lot of people can't tell you that they're ready to go home. You know, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. You know, and so for your loved one to be able to tell you that they are ready, I don't think that we should be the selfish people that we tend to be sometimes. You know, if they're ready to go, we have to release them and let them go. And as much as it hurts us, we have to believe that we live our lives right, that we're going to see them again. And we need to, you know, give them their wings and let them fly. And don't be selfish and try to hold on, you know, to them, because they're ready. And my mom gave the world everything that she had. When she left here, she left empty, because she poured her heart and soul out into everything that she did. And so when she said she was ready to go. And I said, you know, it's okay. You know, and Marvette went in the room one day and she says, Mommy, she says, I am your baby. She says, and I'm letting you know that if you're ready to go, she says, it's all right. She said, because we can take care of ourselves. You know, and to me, I think that gave her a lot of comfort and a lot of peace to know that, you know, we're releasing her, you know, to go. And then sometimes you have to do that for your loved one.
Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed panel. To welcome to the microphone, Pastor Desmond Creek.
I only have one regret, that I did not get to meet such a phenomenal person. Let's give her legacy in my life. I'm going to sing a song that was requested. It's an old hymn of the church. If I walk in the pathway of duty, and if I work till the close of the day, I will see the great King in his beauty. When I go the last mile of the way, rest at the close of the day. For I know there are joys that await me when I'm gone the last mile of the way. And if here I have earnestly striven, and if I have tried all His will to obey, twill enhance all the rapture of heaven when I go the last mile of the way. When I go the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day. For I know there are joys that await me. Oh, yes, they do. When I walk the last mile of the way. When I'm gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day. For I know there are joys that await me when I'm gone the last mile of the way. Oh yes, when I've gone the last mile of the way. Oh yes, when I am gone the last mile of the way.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Nobody? Okay, done. Nobody has any questions at all? Well, I guess you guys were so informative, wonderful. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, what does MP represent?
The question was, what does MP represent?
That was my question.
Military police. Anyone else? Does anyone else have any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for participating in this really.
Wasn't this an amazing program tonight? We have learned so much more about Miss Emily Meggett, more than her being a chef. We learned about her life, her family, her church, her career, her activism. And that's what we wanted to do here tonight, and we feel like we accomplished that, because though she is a New York publisher, book writer, we also know that she was so much more than that. And in addition to that, and so we're grateful that the International African American Museum has been working with this family and the community so that we can honor one of our own, our Gullah Geechee own, from Edisto. And so I want to thank our panelists tonight. Thank you for coming from far and near and just allowing yourselves to share your stories and your memories of Miss Emily Meggett. Thank you, Carolyn, for being our moderator tonight. I also want to acknowledge Wine and Food. Are they still here? Yes, please stand. Wine and Food. They did Matriarch of the Low Country. And Mr. was one of those honorees. I want to thank our IAAM team, our special events folks who made this space so wonderful. I also want to make sure I acknowledge our Faith-Based Advisory Council, Naomi and Heather and Pat and so many others who, if not for them, we would not be in this space tonight. They were diligent, they were activated, they were encouraged, they did not give up. So please stand and let's give them. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for sitting through and listening and just learning so much more about Mrs. Emily Meggett and the work that she has done. The family will be here at the table signing the books. Our bookstore is still open, so if you want to get over there really quickly and get your book if you haven't already. And we still have a little bit more of tasting of the food, so grab something on your way out. And then Marquette, did you want to just give some closing remarks really quickly, and then we'll continue to mingle and get the book signed and then the taste.
I am honored tonight, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that came out to participate in this great event honoring Emily Meggett. My heart is full. I listened to the panelists talk and say wonderful things about my mom. I am grateful. I shed a few tears, but it's okay. And I know it's okay because my mom asked me. My mom asked Marvette. She says, Marvette, open the door. Open the door, Marvette. My mom was ready to leave this world. She asked me to open the door, and I forgot. I left the door open, didn't put the alarm on, left the door open so my mom could leave this world. It makes me feel like I've done what she asked me to do. She clenched my hands. Open the door, Marvette. And I did. I let go, and I let God have his way with her. And that's what she wanted. And in saying that, I've spent so much time when my mom was sick, and I knew she was tired and she was ready. And I says, Mommy, it's okay. Don't let anyone call you from your journey. Go ahead. We will be okay. And in my heart today, I believe that my mom is smiling down on us, saying, job well done, panelists. She thanked you. She loved you. We love her. God loved her best. So that's not what I had written down. That's what was in my heart. So I'm speaking from my heart. And I want to say to those that has driven here from far and near, thank you all so much for coming. And I appreciate everything, all the love, all the support that you've given our family, and all the support that you've given to my mom over the years. She has touched so many lives, and I am so grateful to be a part of Emily Meggett's life and to call myself her baby girl. So before I forget, I want to thank Reverend Demet Jenkins, thank you so much, and your incredible staff, the IAAM and their staff. The Meggett family says thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity and supporting the Gullah Geechee community. To our great moderator, Carol Murray, thank you so much. You put me on the spot. It's okay. Everybody know it. I did, and I will say this, and they'll say, no, you didn't. I did fix the greens. What I did with those greens. I only boiled meat. If you tried it, I know it was wonderful because guess what? Marvette put her heart, her hands, and her love into that heart. So, you all enjoyed it. And we're gonna get back on track so we can leave. To the panel, the Jenkins family, the Dodge family, Smith, Bolton, they're all represented here today. We want to say thank you, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for my mom's journey. It wasn't easy, but we thank you. This is what God has ordained for her latter part of her life to be a blessing for all of us to endure. So I want to say as well to an adopted daughter, Harriet, and her husband, Greg Howard. Please wave your hand. They came here from San Antonio, Texas. I don't know if I have anybody that came other than Donald that far to show their respect to my mom and her memories, the legacy that she has left behind. So I want to say thank you to you guys for doing that and supporting us. I know my mom is looking down and she's happy, smiling. She has left such a rich legacy behind. To God be the glory. We want to say God has his way, his own time in doing whatever he does, and God makes no mistakes. God has taken the best, but guess what? She's still here in our hearts today. And we can all say that we have tasted something or we have felt something that Emily Meggett has done for all of us to show up tonight. And with that, we say thank you, thank you, thank you.
So we'll have the family go sit to the table out there. So those who want to get their books signed, and please grab some more food on your way out and stop by the bookstore. Have a good night. Thank you.
MP, them gals out here selling and signing books. Look at here. Yes.
Okay, Gary, you come get in the picture. Let Greg take it, and we will have somebody have you and Greg in the picture. DJ right there. DJ's right there. DJ's right. Come on.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3.
Now you
Getting
got
there?
to keep
Yes,
Greg.
okay.
All right, let's roll.
You got enough for him?
Yeah. Get a little piece of the sign in there at the whole family crew museum. A little bit over and touch MP. Ah, wait, that was in focus. And this one is for the coffee table. Okay.
On the wall. Thank you.
Well, hey, I had to get real close somewhere. Somewhere.
Can we please give a round of applause?
goes like this.